messed up so bad that it was messing up the sound.
Okay, if you'll go to the top of your next empty page. And I'm gonna show you another way you're gonna be able to use equivalent fractions.
Oh.
Okay, another way to use equivalent fractions to do something else with. Okay, so if you'll put this at the top of your next empty page. We're gonna put fractions
I can't see the word.
to decimals. Okay, fractions to decimals.
Dr. Phil, I can't see the board.
I can't move it because that's the only way I can get a video of the board. So, if you wanna move over here where Maddie, across from Maddie, you can. Or just get your chair over either way. Okay, so fractions to decimals. Okay, so everybody write fractions to decimals. Alright, so we're gonna look at how we're gonna use equivalent fractions to help us with decimals. Okay, so first of all, when you have your decimal point, okay, so you have your decimal point, so just put a little decimal point. Okay, the next place next to the decimal point, okay, so here's my decimal point. The next place is the tenths place. So the tenths place is right next to the decimal point. Okay, so there's my decimal point, and then I have the tenths place next to it. Okay, and then the next place over besides that is the hundredths place. Okay, so decimal point, and then we have tenths, and then we have hundredths. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to know. So when you have your decimal point, you have the tenths place, and then you have the hundredths. Okay, so now we're gonna look at a fraction. So I want you to write 2/5. Okay, we wanna change 2/5 to a decimal. Okay, we wanna change 2/5 to a decimal. So what we need is we need this denominator, so let's put equals. We need to make it either a 10 or a 100. And since it's a 5, the most logical thing we do would be to change it to a 10. Okay, and then now we have equivalent fractions. So we've done this a million times. You say, what do you do to go from 5 to 10? You do the same thing on the top. So what are we missing, Maddie? 4. Okay, Maddie, read me that fraction. 4 tenths. Okay, did everybody hear that? 4 tenths. Okay, remember this is the tenths place as a decimal. So 4 tenths is 0.4. 4 tenths. So you say whatever number is here, you say this after it. So this and this are the same thing. This is 4 tenths. This is 4 tenths. Okay, because it's in the tenths place. So all I did to change this fraction into a decimal was to get it where the bottom was either a 10 or a 100, and since it's only a 5, it made sense to go to 10. So here's my 4 tenths. This is 4 tenths. So all of these things are the same. Okay? All right, so you're going to keep writing. I've got to take this off because I don't have any more space. Okay, so let's look at one more fraction in your notes. Let's do 7/20.
This is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be like so many steps.
7/20. Okay, with 7/20, again, if we want to change it to a decimal, we want to get it the bottom to either 10 or 100. And since this is 20, it's going to make more sense to get it to 100, so we can get a decimal from it. Okay, so again, we've done this a million times. We have 2 equivalent fractions that we're missing one piece. So you say, what do you do to go from 20 to 100, and you do the same thing on the top. So Caroline, what do we do to go from 20 to 100?
Times
Do the same thing on the top.
5.
Okay, when we read that, it is 35 hundredths. Okay, and remember that when you have a decimal, the second place over is the hundredths place, so 0.35. So you say 35, and then you say where it ends in. So it ends in the hundredths place. So this is 35 hundredths. Because remember, this is tenths, this is hundredths. So 0.35 will be the decimal that goes with 7/20.
Is it okay if I'm just like doing equals 35?
Yeah, as long as you know what that means. Okay, so that's all there is to it. You look at the denominator and you're thinking, okay, I need to either get it to 5 or I need to get it to 100, and then you can switch it to a decimal. Okay, and then we're gonna come back to your composition book, one more time, because there's actually, another thing that we're gonna look at in a minute, but let's go to your whiteboard for a second, Oliver.
Does the denominator have to be even and go into 100 for it to work?
Yes,
Okay. So it either has to go into 100 exactly
or 10. And there's gonna be one thing that can happen, but we're gonna look at that in a second. So what I want you to do on your whiteboard is I want you to put 3/5. 3/5, so I wanna switch that to a decimal. So is it gonna be make more sense to make the bottom a 10 or to make it 100 since it's only a 5? Maddie?
A 10.
A 10. So we're gonna make it a 10.
So then we're missing 6.
We're missing 6. And so what would that be, 6/10? What would that be as a decimal, Maddie?
So let's
0.6. Okay, 0.6. The 6/10 is 0.6. Okay, let's look at another one. Okay, what if I have 9/25? 9/25. So what should I get the denominator to? Should I get it to 10 or should I get it to 100? Maggie?
100.
Get it to 100, because we know that 25 times something equals 100. And if you think about money, that should be really easy to think about how many quarters make $1. Same thing. How many 25s make 100? And so what do you do to go from 25 to 100, Oliver?
4.
Do the same thing on the top.
36.
36. So we're gonna have 36 hundredths, and then how will we write that as a decimal, Maddie?
0.36.
0.36. Okay, easy. And again, going back to, we're using stuff we already know how to do new things. That's why in math, always make sure if there's something you don't understand, say something, because usually it's gonna come back again. Okay, what if we have, let's see, let's do 16/25. Okay, we just did one with 25 on the bottom, so we already know it's gonna be times 4, because we just did one. So if we have 16/25, we wanna switch that to a decimal. And we wanna switch that to a decimal. What would we get? Alexa.
So for the top, you have to do times 4 with 62, and that equals 64. So it's going to be 0.64.
Exactly. Okay, what about this one? About 7/50. I want that to become a decimal. 7/50. So what do you think we should get the denominator to, Caroline?
100.
100. Okay, and so now we just need to figure out our missing piece, and then we'll have our decimal. So Mason, what would our missing piece be?
14.
14. So what's my decimal?
0.14.
0.14. Okay, let's put another example in your composition book. Okay, so you're gonna have an example of everything that could happen. Okay, and this is something else that could happen.
Wait, what was this? Oh.
Okay, so I'm gonna put 12/15. Okay, put 12/15 in your composition book. Okay, we wanna change this to a decimal. Okay, we wanna change it to a decimal. And since I'm telling you we can change it to a decimal, that means that you're gonna be able to do this is either a 10 or 100, and since this is bigger than 10, we're gonna go to 100. Okay, but we have a problem, because you can't multiply 15 and get 100. Okay, you can't do it. So, this is what you do if you can't do it. We're gonna reduce this fraction first. Okay, we're gonna reduce this fraction first, because we know that 3 goes into both of these numbers. So, what happens when we reduce 12/15? Maggie?
We get 4/5.
We get 4/5. Okay, so slash through these two, and we're just reducing it to 4/5. Now we can do it. Because we can go from 5 to 100. Make sure you slash these two too, because you want to make sure when you go to multiply that you don't actually multiply by that, because you're going to multiply by this. So you say, what do you do to go from 5 to 100? And the same thing needs to happen on the top. So think about what you multiply by 5 to get 100, and we do the same thing on the top. So what would we multiply 5 by to get 100? Alexa?
25.
Not 25, that's times 4.
Oh,
Maggie,
20.
20. 5 times 20. So that means we've got to multiply 4 by 20. And so Mason, what would we get for the top?
80.
80. So this is 80 hundredths. And so what would our decimal be if it's 80 hundredths?
0.80.
0.80. And that's our answer. Okay, let's go to your whiteboard, and we're going to come back to your composition book one more time, so you might want to either not close it or flip it over or whatever. We're going to do one more thing in your composition book.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, so same thing's going to happen here. So I'm going to give you 3 6. Okay, and we can't go from 6 to 10 or from 6 to 100. Okay, we can't do either one. So that's going to tell us we need to reduce it first. And you can divide those both by 3. And so what would we get if we divide those both by 3? Alexa?
1 half.
1/2. So let's go ahead and make this a 10 because we can, because you can go from 2 to 10. And so what would we get for our top if we have 1 over 2 equals blank over 10? Mason?
5.
Times 5 times 5. So we have 5/10. 0.5. Okay, so if you have a fraction, you're like, wait, I can't get that to 10 or 100. If you'll reduce it first, you'll be able to do it. Okay, if you'll reduce it first, you'll be able to do it. So let's do another one like that. So let's do 9/15. Okay, again, we can't do it right now because you can't go from 15 to 100, but we can do this because 3 goes into both.
So then it would be 5, the under would be 5, and then on top would be 3.
It'd be 3/5. And now we can do it because you can go from 5 to 100, do the same thing on the top, and we have our missing. And you could actually, you know what, you don't even have to go to 100. You could actually just go to 10 because you can go from 5 to 10. You could go to 100, but it'll be easier to go from 5 to 10. And then do the same thing on the top. Alexa.
So if you were doing 100, you would have 0.20. If you were doing 10, you would do 0.2.
Yeah, it'd be times 2. Well, this is times 2 times 2. So this is missing what? Not a 2, but a times 2 times 2. 6. It's missing a 6. So 6/10. And then we would need to switch it to a decimal, which will be what? 0.6. Okay, one more thing in your composition book, and then we are going to do a game.
Yeah. Every math class, we always have a game.
Try to if we have time. Okay, so this is really important, and this is remember at the beginning of the year when we switched numbers into words, and I said don't use the word and. Don't use the word and. That's because in math, when you see a decimal point, you say and. Okay, that's when you say and is when there's a decimal point. So put that in your notes. So a decimal point, you say and when you're talking. Okay, you say and. Okay, so I want you to write this in mixed number down.
In composition?
You're in your composition book.
In Word?
I want you to write this right here. What I have on your here in your composition book. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to ignore this. Okay, we're going to ignore this big number. We don't need it right now. We're going to switch the back to a decimal. Okay, we're going to just ignore the whole number right now. So we're going to do what we just did. So 3/5, we can get the bottom to 10. And so what would we get for the top, Maggie? We would get 6. Okay, so we just changed this mixed number from 3 3/5 to 3 6/10.
3.6.
Okay, and is a decimal point, so it's just 3.6. So it's just the same thing, it's just got a whole number in front of it. So 3 6/10, 3 6/10. So it's the same thing, we just have a whole number in the front before the decimal. No, you can, because you just know that it's gone away. We've changed it to 3 6/10. Okay, so let's do a couple of these on your whiteboard. Yeah, it's not hard. It shouldn't be hard.
I'm not thinking it's gonna be a lot harder.
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But
Same.
it's like, no.
Okay, so let's do 45 and 15/20. Okay, and again, we're ignoring the 45 for right now. All we're worried about is the back. Okay, because we don't need to worry about the 45 right this minute. We just need to get the back to where we can switch it to a decimal. So we need to say, what do you do to go from 20 to 100? And we need to do the same thing on the top. Maddie.
So to get to 20 to 100, it's times 5. And so then if you do 15 times 5, then it'll be
75.
75. Okay, so now how do we switch what's up there to a decimal?
45.
But somebody else. Alexa, I need your hand up too. Alexa.
45.75.
45.75. All right, let's do one more of these and then we're gonna do game.
These are easy.
Should be. Okay, so let's do 22 and 3/20ths. And we want to switch this to a decimal. So again, ignore the 22, get the back part, switch the 3/20ths to a decimal. And again, it's gonna be easiest to go to 100. And then, what would our new number be? Maggie?
22, 15.
Yes, because this is times 5 times 5. So this is really 1500ths. This is 22 and 1500ths, so that's 22 and 1500ths. Easy. Okay, we are gonna do actually a game as a class. We're gonna do a bingo game. So what I need you to do is put everything